Have you heard that Final Fantasy XIV is having a free trial including the award-winning expansion Heavensward? Ladies and gentlemen, if your existence on the internet is anywhere near the world of gaming, then there's no doubt you've heard something similar to that. Not just from friends either, this is mostly random people going out of their way to tell you and the world that Final Fantasy XIV is a fantastic MMO to play. It's this evangelical fan base and the meme they made which I firmly believe sowed the seeds for Final Fantasy's golden age. In this video, I'm going to look briefly at WoW's fall from grace and why it was Final Fantasy which rose above all the other major titles in the MMO genre to become the new king. But let us wind back for a second, as before mid-2021, World of Warcraft was the undisputed lord of the MMOs, a dragon of immense size and power laying atop an even more substantial pile of cash and money, who'd slain so many WoW killers in its time that nobody else dared try to make a new MMO for so many years. The genre basically consisted of WoW at the top, and then Guild Wars 2, Elder Scrolls Online, RuneScape, and of course, Final Fantasy XIV, existing in this almost niche status. Each of them have been nurturing their audiences and getting better in the background, but all of them still in the shadow of Warcraft. Like all great empires, however, World of Warcraft was not killed by external threats, but was taken down by internal ones. From the peak of 12 million subscribers in Wrath of the Lich King to the last officially recorded amount of 5.6 in Warlords of Draenor, and then a continuous bleed out until it's stabilised for the past two expansion at about 3.3 million by current estimates. This stabilisation, however, has now turned into an even deeper bleed, as everything seems to be coming to a head. Patch 9.1, the first major content release since the November 2020 release, took 9 months and has been widely condemned. Game systems have been frustrating for the majority of the player base, and not only did this not change in 9.1, but it compounded with their new gearing system, the Domination Sockets, which had players go through content they don't like to remake legendary gear they'd already invested hours into. The story has been similarly lambasted by most commentators, with even PC Gamer releasing a headline article titled "WoW's latest cinematic was a narrative disaster and players hate it." Finally, we get to the elephant in the room too, as on top of a bad game, it appears that Blizzard has been an even worse company. The current lawsuit filed by the state of California has highlighted truly horrendous allegations of rampant sexual abuse and discrimination rife throughout the company. Tie this in with a lot of content creators who really brought tons of interest into the game have started to quit WoW en masse, and doing it very publicly. Mad Season Show's video, No King Rules Forever, Quitting WoW, has at the time of recording 926,000 views. Pints, How I Lost My Best Friend in WoW, has over 360,000, and Preach Gaming, The End of an Era, has now exceeded 500,000. Preach, notably, was big enough to and well regarded enough by Blizzard themselves to have had the notorious interview with Ian Haskostas, the lead game designer of WoW, shortly before patch 9.1 was even released. World of Warcraft has become so dismal that it's worth risking your entire livelihood to get away from. So horrifically trash that it's shattered in some cases more than a decade of emotional investment and built-up sunk cost fallacy. In short, it's become a casino that cures gambling addiction. So here we are now. The masses are disillusioned, and so many people are adrift after finally waking up from the fever dream that was Mr. Blizzard's wild ride. It's here that they remember that thing they heard so long ago. That thing they first thought was a meme, but now is far more serious than that. Final Fantasy XIV's free trial, and with that award-winning expansion as well. Slowly the dominoes began to fall. As it is with the way modern gaming communities form, it began with the content creators. Belluar Gaming on his Stream and Clips channel started talking about Final Fantasy XIV only 2 months ago in early June. These videos were then watched by Asmongold, easily the biggest Twitch streamer of World of Warcraft content, which first resisted Final Fantasy but then relented. In a stream which peaked at over 200,000 viewers, more than 1 million unique views throughout the day, and then further millions on all his YouTube videos after the fact. This has become the point that truly marked when the dam not just broke, but utterly collapsed. Suddenly, it truly was everywhere. Square Enix's marketing team took zero time to take advantage, Advertisements were pumped throughout the internet, giving people who subscribed to certain Final Fantasy streamers the exclusive fat black chocobo mount, which was last available during another promotion with Amazon in 2019. They even went further to protect the experiences of those streamers by bringing down the ban hammer on anyone who went out of their way to stream, snipe, and grief them. Those streamers have come out with public statements thanking Square Enix for taking the game experience of their players so seriously, which has naturally started to build a rapport between creator and company. As this relationship continues to grow, we'll see even more Final Fantasy XIV content, and the audiences of those creators shift towards the game. For the normal person, though, they wouldn't expect that treatment of game masters coming to help solve issues with the community, but they've extended this treatment to every player. It doesn't take a long search on Reddit to hear stories of people's in-game tickets being answered both personally and satisfactorily. The toxicity that many WoW players have faced in the past, especially on player versus player servers, is all but missing. Those ex-WoW players have emerged onto the fresh world of Eorzea with that sprout icon next to their name, which almost would have been a death sentence in the WoW community, have been met with open arms. Every group is either full of new players getting to explore and figure out the game together, or there is one or two veterans who are more than happy to help. The world is truly alive, so much so that there simply isn't enough server space for them all, and queues have become pervasive for everyone. Naoki Yoshida recently had to come out to explain the server issues and apologise profusely for them, taking personal responsibility and assuring people they're doing all they can to fix the issues, and the people believe him. Going from Blizzard's corpo speak to the more human interactions from Square Enix is another one of those many things blowing the minds of new players. Truly, they're suffering from success. But the question still remains, why Final Fantasy XIV? Well, we've already touched a few reasons. The community, the game, and Square Enix itself, all of which have come together to create the perfect storm to outpace their competitors and contend with a wounded giant. First, the community. From the outside, the stereotype appeared to just be a bunch of weebs playing their anime game, but none could say that they weren't really enjoying it. Not only just enjoying it, loving it. Even early on, there were people wanting to bring more and more into the community. It's a hidden gem. The aesthetic is high fantasy, not anime, so you'll get into it. Every expansion keeps bringing in more features that are really, really fun. The developers are great and in touch with the community, and of course, it's just such an entertaining experience. Hearing all of this praise for a game once isn't going to change someone's mind, and especially not a WoW veteran with days and days of playtime, but hearing all that praise for years from an ever-growing number of voices, seeming to cover every last complaint that you've had about World of Warcraft for years. Now that will get even the most hard-hearted of gamers to give in and try Final Fantasy XIV. Although, as with every community, the people who are vocal are in the minority. So, what about the one in-game? The community that people will meet day to day when they finally give in to try? Well, it's just as fantastic as they claim. From personal experience, everyone is helpful and excited to have more people around. As part of the game, you do dungeons and raids throughout the story which tie back into it. But afterwards, there were people who simply said, enjoy the cutscenes, the story's really cool, enjoy it. There were never spoilers, there were just people wanting you to have a good time with it. Add on top of that, even when you're just in the world itself, it's fun. Going through any of the major cities, there are people running around, showing off elaborate dresses, dancing, and even playing music. And I'm not talking about preset tracks either. There's a dedicated performance mode for the Bard class, where they just can straight up play real music. It's really weird to teleport into a pirate city and hear someone playing the instrumental to You're Going to Go Far, Kid by The Offspring, but good golly gosh, is it wondrous. It's systems like these which help the community thrive, as they can have fun in that community on top of just playing through the story or the dungeons and the raids. The world is enjoyable, and that brings us neatly to the next reason for this golden age, Final Fantasy XIV itself. Although really, we should be calling it a Realm Reborn, considering the first time Final Fantasy XIV was released, it was by all measures a complete failure. Technical problems, messy UI, very little content, and a fatigue system which effectively limited playtime, all led Square Enix to go as far as to literally blow up the world and rebuild it from scratch. We got great insight into this reconstruction effort from a slideshow presentation done by Yoshida back in 2015, where he goes through what went wrong and what he did to turn things around. There's much in this presentation which is truly excellent, and I'll have a link in the description for you to go and read it yourself. However, the last slide is the most important to the game. To quote, "We have learned. 1. Never forget the fans. Without them, there is no us. 2. Fun comes first. If it isn't fun, then you're doing it wrong. 3. Never back down. Always aim to amaze. And 4. Don't forget your roots. It's what the fans crave." Square Enix in the past 8 years since A Realm Reborn haven't strayed from these 4 points, and the game has benefited greatly from it. The main scenario quest, or MSQ, which is your primary story and vehicle to unlock the many features throughout the game, is so magical an experience. There isn't much Final Fantasy XIV Let's Play, just out of fear of spoiling it for new players. The updated gameplay is relatively unique in style, with a longer time between ability casts, but having a certain subset that you can weave in, which lends to fun class design and some very high skill ceilings. Add on top tons of content, character customization unlocks, a fully fleshed out crafting system which requires some skill, and minigames including a full card game, a version of Mario Kart, and an RTS. Yes, a real-time strategy game in an MMO. I could go on, but the key message is clear. There is plenty to do, and you can pick and choose what you want depending on how you're feeling. It covers all your bases. So much so that people feel like they're part of an active world, in a second home that they can be in very literally for some players who've managed to snag some land and build a house for themselves. This is everything Square Enix wanted in their game redesign, and they've accomplished it. But naturally, it's not the only thing they've done to contribute to this influx of players. Which brings us to the third reason for Final Fantasy's success: the company behind it. Quick history lesson, but Square Enix has only existed since 2003, with a merger between two companies, naturally named Square and Enix. The independent game creator Square was created in 1986, which was responsible for the Final Fantasy series, while Enix was founded in 1975 as more of a publisher, with the most famous title it was associated with being Dragon Quest, which sold more than 1.5 million copies in Japan alone, and even inspired Final Fantasy itself. Between the companies, they've tried films, manga, arcade games, developing and publishing a myriad of other video games, and, of course, tons of merchandise, which is surprisingly hard to get your hands on in certain parts of the world. They're big, which means they've got some big resources, which first got used to revitalize the game instead of just scrapping it like so many other companies would. Another big thing this stockpile of cash and multiple revenue streams does is it gives the developers some wiggle room to really have fun with the game as well as with the community. No better example of this can be found except for their 2-day annual celebration of the players and the community, FanFest. This veneration of that community even extends to the memes, and this year's FanFest, they took inspiration from a fan meme called twining.mp4, which is the representation of a party dancing through a dungeon with the theme of the dungeon playing. 44 seconds and 2.2 million views to date. It was a pretty popular joke in the community. The developers, taking this, created their own choreography inspired by the meme, and then performed that dance in homage when that song was played live at FanFest. Played by an in-house band of developers called the Primals, no less. I've linked both videos below for reference, as it's an excellent example of not only the community, but the developers having fun with the game together. The last thing which Square Enix's resources can also bring to the table is a powerful marketing team. Make no mistake, it'll be the community which really brings people in, but it's the marketing which brings the people to the community. Doesn't matter who you are, if you see a Final Fantasy's free trial ad 15 times on Facebook, you'll eventually decide to give it a look. Either they go straight into the game and the community welcomes them, or they go to Reddit, Twitter, gaming news sites, or anywhere else you may conceivably go to learn more, and find that fan base is just waiting to pull them in. They've had the resources and the flexibility to also be able to strike while the iron's hot, and it shows with their instant increase in advertisement and the massive investment into streamers, with that very efficiently made deal with Twitch to get the community to sub to those Square Enix approved streamers for the fat black chocobo mount that I referred to earlier. Although the community, the game, and the company behind it is great, well deserving of its current success, a question still remains. Will players actually stick after this honeymoon period? And I think they will. And it all comes down to timing. This surge began mid-July and has only just started to slow down. With the MSQ taking more than 100 hours, there is simply so much content to chew on, and I doubt many people will manage to get through everything until the end of the year. And why is the end of the year important? Well, one word: Endwalker. The next expansion slated for release on November 23rd, which will continue the story and add in tons more content itself. The month before will have that pre-expansion hype starting to build, with old and new players alike getting ready to experience a whole new world on equal footing. It's this expansion which will solidify the player base from this massive build-up in Final Fantasy XIV. By the time the new expansion hype dies down, most players from this influx will have been playing from roughly July to February. And 7 months is more than enough time for you to get invested in your character and the world as a whole. World of Warcraft. The old king of MMOs has fallen on its own sword. The citizens of that once great kingdom are leaving, and in the times of the plague where online communities have become so important for so many people, they've gone in search of a new world to call home. From all the competitors in the MMO market, Final Fantasy XIV has become that world for many, thanks to its community going out to bring the people in, being a great game in its own right, and having a set of developers who care not only for the game, but the community as well. The king is dead. Long live the king.